everybody. I just want to take first the opportunity to thank you for all coming out. I always appreciate a little bit of a less stressful forum and an atmosphere where a lot more questions will actually come at you, because I do legitimately love talking about what it is that I do. My name is Adam Woods. I'm running for the position of Vice President External, which means that if elected, I would represent all of you fine folks to the government, provincial, federal, municipal. I spent the last year working under our current Vice President External as the External Policy and Information Officer. I've done a lot of research into everything that I'm about to talk about, which is where we get into my platform. I'm running on three main points that I want to bring to the government on behalf of students, because I feel they are the most prevalent issue in our campus community today. The first is something that has not been brought up at an external level before, and it's mental health. Now, before this year, there was really no direct government funding towards mental health, and it was always kind of seen as a taboo. Like, we had this huge mental health issue, but it was like, how are we going to deal with it? And nobody thought the answer of asking the government was going to be a good one. But recently, they've made $10.4 million in direct funding towards mental health. And I think that that is grounds for us to continue lobbying for increased and continuous funding. That's only meant to last for 3 years. Stress in university doesn't go away, and stress is what causes the mental health issues. So as a result, that funding should be continuous. The second issue, well, the second two issues that are big ones for me are things that have already been lobbied on by the Students' Union. The first is mandatory non-instructional fees. If you don't know what that is, that's all good. The university doesn't really want you to. A mandatory non-instructional fee is their way of bypassing the tuition cap. In 2009, the government set a tuition cap stating that you could not exceed CPI in terms of charging tuition. They said, whatever, we'll just make other fees and make them mandatory. So you guys all pay $300 a year for what is called a cause fee, and it's like literally the description is walking on their floors. And every time that we get mad at them for their description, they just change it. So we really don't know what it charges us, and that is something that we need to continue fighting to ensure that they ask us beforehand. I'm running out of time here, but my last platform point is about student employment. I encourage you to ask me about it. If you want more information on my platform, please go to www.woodsforexternal.ca, and I'd appreciate a job-related question from somebody. So. 2 minutes is just not enough.
Okay, you have to answer questions.
Yeah, I know. You guys' forms now.
All right. All right, so what do you plan on doing in terms of fighting for STEC and getting jobs to students in terms of your portfolio or working with the government?
Certainly, and this is a phenomenal question. For those of you who don't know, the Summer Temporary Employment Program is a Government of Alberta initiative to essentially create jobs during the summer for students. I mean, I'm sure you've all had struggles finding a summer job before, and I'm sure once you found that summer job, it wasn't exactly the best paying, or at least enough to support you if you are paying for everything yourself. At first, my platform was to actually increase and expand this program. However, it was recently cut. We don't know for sure that it's cut, but there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of talk stemming from papers like the Journal that it is getting cut, and as a result, that's decent confirmation. At this point, if it is cut, we're going to be the only province and territory in Canada without a provincial employment program for students. This includes the Yukon, the Northwest Territories. Everybody has one except for us. It was also a great program. I'd like to talk about that more later. But moral of the story is, this is 3,000 student jobs that were just cut, and this is something that we need to fight back for. This is something that we cannot just simply accept when the government says, hey, we're going to cut this program because it doesn't have much use. Well, sorry, no, it does have use. It provides students with employment, which is an extremely important thing for us to be able to pay for our education.
Okay, so what is your plan for fighting back then?
The plan at this point to fight student employment is realistically just strong lobbying. I will, simply because it's assuming, if elected, I assume that it'll be cut. And at that point, I'll be the first one to walk into the room with likely, one of my first meetings will be with Minister Dave Hancock, who is the Minister of Human Services. This is under his portfolio. It'll be him that I have to go talk to and say, hey, this program is valuable to students and it needs to stay. So at this point, it's just ensuring that we let all the government officials know that this is valuable to students and that it needs to be brought back to life. And hopefully within the next year, that could actually happen.
And do you think you'll have the backing of the university administration in reaching out to these ministers and getting the program back?
I don't think this is necessarily an issue that I've reached out to university administration with. I think that it is solely a student issue. I don't even think they would really put all that much effort into it. The university lobbies too, but they have their own issues to lobby on, which is why we need our own representative to go and talk about these things. So I genuinely feel that it would be probably just a students' union advocating on this issue, but I can assure you that myself, and I can't speak for other members running, but I know this will be an issue prevalent within executive committee, and it's something that I think that we need strong action on. And I will go and lobby these government officials. I've got no problem stating my opinion. So.
All right, the next question is about mental health. Are there ESL services available? And if not, do you plan on having some sort of way to cope with that?
Sorry, ESL? I'm not.
English Second Language Services. people who don't speak English fluently?
That is a very interesting question, and honestly, I can't provide you with a good answer because I don't know. At this point, it's realistically just about ensuring funding is continuous, and once we have that funding, it's obviously like we just received it. So another big part of it is obviously looking at where that funding goes and who is going to receive a piece of it and what it's planned to be used for. I imagine that language issues are a huge mental health problem. You have numerous students coming from across seas and from different countries that don't have the greatest English skills. So I can see how that would be an issue, and if it is a mental health issue, then that's something we should definitely consider this funding going towards. But those decisions are made by the Dean of Students, which is furthermore why with this funding we should also be having a chat with the Dean of Students and ensuring that any student mental health related funding is going towards where it should be, and not just towards initiatives that aren't for the best. Sorry, I probably cut over my time there. No, I'm doing good.
Okay, just make sure you guys, if you have any follow-up, just tell me. Open to any follow-up.
Follow-ups are good.
Otherwise, I have lots of questions.
Bring 'em.
Okay, so basically, with a lot of mental health services, counseling is inconsistent. It's infrequent. You're reaching out to too many people at once. How do you plan on improving those specific services?
Well, specifically, I again, like I'm not gonna lie, like I do not have any specific plans at this juncture to facilitate further mental health assistance, I guess you could say. That is something that the university tackles. That is the Dean of Students' office. That is not the Students' Union. They decide where the mental health funding goes. At this point, just the fact that this is being made an issue, I'm happy. Just the fact that we now have grounds to challenge the provincial government and say, hey, you have recognized this as an issue. You have recognized that there is a mental health problem on not only our campus, but all the campuses across Alberta. Let's talk about why this funding needs to continue. The Students' Union doesn't have as much of a say in how that funding is used, but I certainly would like to raise our voice with the Dean of Students' office, and that's something that I would like to do, and I'm sure that the incoming VP Academic, as well as other individuals, will be bringing up student life, because that is their portfolio as well. My job is to get the money. It's the student life and the academics' job to make sure that it's used well.
All right, if your job's only to get the money, then how do you ensure accountability is going to occur? How do you ensure that money's going to go somewhere meaningful?
Meaningfully? Well, absolutely. And again, it all comes down to the Dean of Students' office. They're the ones that direct the flow of money for mental health. And it's not really within my portfolio to be lobbying members of the university administration, although I'd love to, because I already do it and I have a great time with it. And yeah, it's a good time.
Okay.
Yeah, I can keep going with this. I would just simply say that it's not necessarily in my portfolio, and that's an honest answer, I think. Obviously, I'd like to be included in those meetings with the Dean of Students' office, but that's an executive decision, assuming I'm elected.
So a lot of students feel that we don't have access to stuff like the Dean of Students' office. We may even have like several degrees of separation for people like you who are going to be championing those issues. How are you going to increase the access we have to meaningfully argue for our own interests that may or may not be the same as the ones you're arguing for?
Okay. Well, at the end of the day, it's all about collaboration between every executive on or elected, and everybody's got to do their job. And I think this is one of those examples of everybody having to do their job. Not to continue hitting this nail on the head here, but at the end of the day, my job is to go talk to the government and say, hey, you know what, mental health is an issue. We require more funding. The funding that we currently have is inadequate. Students are being sent away from mental health facilities on campus. Issue related. And then it is to take my own initiative and say, hey, guys, on exec committee, mental health is an issue. We need to bring this up to both the Dean of Students' office, to the university. We need to, within this next year, ensure that something is done about it. My first step, I think, would be to make a policy on it with the policy committee at the in the SU. There's a policy committee. It makes all of the Students' Union's political policies. There currently is not a policy on mental health, and there absolutely needs to be, especially outlining a lot of these questions as to how we would address it. And it's really just lobbying to ensure that the funds are used to the best of...
All right. Yeah. And so a lot of issues that come up with the Students' Union are championed and then become a polarizing issue. There are people on both sides of it. How do you plan to deal with the negative backlash that's bound to occur both in terms of externalities, like other papers like the Journal talking about what the SU is doing, and within the university itself?
Well, that's just life. You walk into the public spotlight and you got to be able to deal with criticism, and that is part of it. At the end of the day, I would do what I always do in face of those situations and cite good statistics. I've been bringing up the NCHA, which is the National Campus Health Assessment, which is a group, I'm not sure if they're both across the US and Canada, I know they're definitely across Canada, and they assess the mental health and other health areas of every university campus. And the U of A is actually not bad. Physical health, we were all right. One of the areas that it really showed that we needed improvement in, though, was emotional wellness and mental health. We were above the average in every single category, every single survey question. Just really showing that mental health is a problem here. We're high above the national average for issues and in terms of students who feel that they're disenfranchised, and we need to continue bringing in support for them. So.
All right, any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
What do you think is more important, accessibility to higher education or affordability?
You've been talking to Dorothy Roberts.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We've never heard of her.
I'm going to say affordability. It is important to know that every student out there has a chance to afford post-secondary, and this really falls into my employment issue. I did a lot of research into student employment this year. That was my job to do. And as a whole, from my research, it's no secret that if you're a student and you're looking for a full-time summer job to support yourself with tuition, with rent, with food, you're not going to be able to make enough just off of one summer job full-time 4 months of the year. Genuinely ensuring that those employment supports are available to students, and that furthermore, my biggest thing with this summer temporary employment program was that there was the province provided a $7 subsidy. It was how it worked. $7 wage subsidy encouraging private companies to hire students. But there was no minimum for the company as to how much they had to pay. So at the end of the day, you could still be paying a student minimum wage, but the government would be contributing like $7 of that. And we need to ensure that these groups that are receiving government help in employing students, which there are none now, are ensuring their students are also well paid, because university is not cheap. We all know that.
All right.
So you talked about the difficulties that the SU has had with the university in terms of like mandatory fees.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about you specifically as an executive, like can help resolve these problems?
Specifically, it's really just about continuing what we've been doing over the past few years. Myself specifically, I think I'm a good negotiator. I think I'm good at walking into a room and communicating what I want and what I think should happen. So there's obviously that, but every vice president external has that. What am I going to do differently? The truth is not much. Over the past few years, every VP external in my experience has done a phenomenal job of communicating that this is an issue, but we've also had 3 ministers for the last 3 VP externals. So every time that it's like we're getting clear across, that minister's gone. It's continuing to make this an issue with Minister Lukaszuk, and it's really just saying, like, at the end of the day, the university is afraid that if we put these to referendums, the students are going to vote against everything. We need to prove to them that we're not. $60 a semester for a gym membership is not a bad deal. Neither is, I think it's $40 or $50 a semester for on-campus health establishments, and that's something that these fees pay for. But it's the other ones like the cause fee, where we don't even know what the hell they're paying or what they're charging us for, and it's $300 that, hey, you know what, could you explain to us what we're paying for? I'm not saying we're not going to pay for it, but could you at least tell us the value in us giving you our money?
All right, and that's time.
Oh.
Thanks.
Oh, Jellen, yes.
Can I ask my question?
Okay, but it's coming out of your time.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah,
kidding. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. This one's actually a pretty important one to me. So academic materials are critical to BPA and BPA external portfolios. Essentially, textbooks are expensive. Now, I work on a day-to-day basis trying to cut the cost of textbooks by working with bookstore by at most 5% over, let's say, 5 or 10 years. The BPA external has the ability to work with the federal government to eliminate parallel textbook importation regulation, which could then see the cut in the price of textbooks by 30%, and it was dropped off as a priority this year. My question is, one, is it a priority for you? And if so, what are you going to do to successfully advocate to the federal government as a member of the Canadian Alliance of Students Associations to cut the cost of textbooks by 30%? Because I'm busting my ass here for 5%.
Is it a priority for me? No, it's not. And I'm just going to be honest. I try my best. Don't lie. And it's not that I don't feel this is an issue. I do. It's the fact that I'm loaded with about 4 provincial issues that I'd like to deal with this year. So I already know that if elected, the majority of my lobbying is going to be at a provincial level, and I need to accept that. Certainly any time that I am going somewhere, or if elected, if I'm going somewhere federally, or if I'm dealing with the ML or MP, yeah, this will be the first issue I bring up, is textbooks. Because as far as that is concerned, I do think that federally, it is our top issue. But I'm not really focusing on federal issues. I think there are far bigger fish to fry provincially, and that is why I would still bring it up certainly with an MP any chance I got, but I don't think there will be many meetings with MPs this year. I think it'll mainly be provincial MLAs and emphasizing a lot of the provincial issues we've had to deal with in the last few years. So that's what I'd say to that. Sorry, buddy. Still talk about it.
Okay, thanks for coming out and telling the truth.
Someone's got it. Oh, kidding.